My name is London Rain. Thank you for joining me in my studio today for the second episode of Between Layers, where I break down beats and samples to give you an insight of what's going on between the layers. Today's sample is called Villain's Theme, and it's the one I made on last week's episode of sample making. I recommend you go check that out right now and then come back here to see how I processed everything that I recorded. First off, we got that bass line that's playing throughout the whole sample. I'll show you what I did first and then compare the sound of the before and after. A very common thing to do when working with live bass is actually taking the same signal and layering it multiple times, each with a different kind of processing and each with a different purpose. So I got my 3 layers of bass right here. Let's go ahead and listen to the first one. This one gives me a very nice and consistent low end, and I got that by using one of Logic's bass amp presets that cuts off the highs and the mids already, boosts the bass and has a compressor built into it, and after that just put a regular stock EQ with a low pass filter. Moving on to the second layer of bass. With this layer, I wanted to boost the higher harmonics of the individual notes to make the bass more audible. It also gives me the picking noise of the strings, which I really liked. The EQ is also there, so this layer doesn't clash with the first one. Here's the last piece of the bass line. Nothing really new here, just used an amp setting that's a little bit distorted for more grit and to fill out the mids. Lastly, on the master of the bass group, I have a compressor and a direction mixer to make the sound mono. Let's listen to the comparison of the before and after right now. Next up, we got the Rhodes. I used the Stage 73V by Arturia for this one. Very little processing on it, just a simple stock EQ with a high pass filter and a plate reverb. Here's what everything sounds like together so far. Let's move on to the flute. Here are the original recordings without any processing. I did very little editing on that, and I recommend you have a look into miking different instruments, because the better you record your stuff, the better it'll sound and the less work you'll have to do in the box. I just put a reverb, just the first preset that comes up when opening Space Designer, and on a group and EQ taking care of some harsh frequencies and a compressor. Here's the flute in context of what we got so far. Now that we got all the instruments, we can move on to the percussion. I started with this rhythm with the sticks that plays throughout the whole sample and kind of gives it like a basic groove. I used an EQ to get rid of unnecessary lows, some torque to add more body, a compressor, a red EQ to get a warmer sound, and a plate reverb. You'll see a very similar processing chain throughout the whole project. By doing that, I just made sure that everything sounded more together and in the same space. Next up, we got shaker, also adding to the basic drive of the sample. Again, I have a stock EQ with a high pass filter, a compressor, red EQ, and a plate reverb. I EQ'd the reverb this time and on a couple of other sounds to make it sound less artificial, and you definitely shouldn't underestimate EQing your reverbs. I also did like a shaker rattle thing, and there's no processing at all on there, just a little pan automation from right to left for some ear candy. I needed some kind of snare next, so I played this one in with my hand drum and also added some accents here and there. Again, basic EQ, torque for body, red EQ for warmth, and a compressor and a plate reverb. I used the hand drum again for a kind of tom hit on some offbeats and for some drum fills. Channel and red EQ and a plate reverb again to make it fit in the mix. Here's what it sounds like. For a little bit of variation, I layered some snare hits with snaps. I did 2 takes, panned them slightly left and right. You already know the processing. In the end, I just added some little filler elements. First off, some swipes with the sticks and with the hand drum, only treated with a basic high-pass filter. Then the cabasa that's only doing little shakes here and there, tamed the highs with an EQ and added a plate reverb. Finally, I put one triangle hit at the beginning of both sections for more accentuation. As always, record the whole thing to tape, and that's it. The sample and the stems are on my Patreon already, but I just uploaded the raw tracks so you have more freedom to experiment with them. You can support me over there or right here by liking or subscribing. As always, really appreciate you taking your time watching this, and see you next Sunday. Love.